Intergovernmental Relations Committee of the Orange County Legislature. It is great to be here in the People's Chamber, doing the people's work here in Orange County. Please note this meeting is also being transmitted live via video conference. The public can find a link to this video cast by visiting the Orange County website, and that's www.orangecountygov.com, clicking on the tab for the legislature, and locating the Rules Committee meeting on the calendar. I'll remind everyone to please silence your electronic devices, your cell phones, your tablets, and also speakers who wish to speak here today, please make sure that you speak clearly into the microphones, and we'll get through this meeting together. At this time, would you please rise for a moment of silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Doreen, would you please call the roll?
Amo. Here. Vero. Here. Cheney. Here. Hines. Here. Kulisek. Paduk.
Here.
Fagione.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Also joining us are Chairwoman Bonelli and Legislator Janet Sutherland. So good afternoon, everybody. For continuity purposes, as we go through today's agenda, I will ask those who have business here before us to come and speak on those matters. I will then turn to the members of the committee for their questions. And next thereafter, I will ask all other legislators not on the committee if they have additional questions. Before we begin, if you will, please allow me to quote President Theodore Roosevelt, who, in an article in May of the year 1900, said, quote, "In short, in life, as in a football game, the principle to follow is hit the line hard, don't foul, and don't shirk, but hit the line hard." I want to congratulate both the Menacing Valley Warrior football program for winning the Section 9 Class A football title, as well as the Port Jervis Raiders, Section 9 Class B football champs, for winning their championship. Both school districts are very proud to exist and call home the 13th Legislative District. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hines. We're going to make one quick change here this afternoon on the agenda, and we're going to move up item number 4. So at this time, I would invite, and she is here with us, our fellow colleague, Legislator Sutherland, Chair of the Opioid Addiction Committee. Just for reference, the Opioid Addiction Committee met at 3 p.m. this afternoon, and they forwarded a resolution, and it is here before us today. And I will seek a motion and a second on the following. And this is a resolution of the Orange County Legislature addressing the safety concerns of kratom and requesting the federal and state regulation of the substance. And I seek a motion and a second. The motion is by Mr. Kulisek. The second is by Mr. Hines. Legislator Sutherland, I will give you the floor. And if you could catch us up to speed as to the results of your committee meeting.
Yes, thank you so much, Chairman. So unanimously, this resolution passed at the Opioid Committee. This was brought to, kratom was brought to my attention, I'm going to say probably about 9 months ago or so, originally, by Annette Cars through Hope Not Handcuffs. And I had never heard of the substance. It is sold in local gas stations and smoke stores, smoking paraphernalia stores, and it amazed me the risk that people are at if this substance is abused, used the wrong way, and the damage that can be done by by using it. That is not to say that under certain circumstances that the pill, the product can help some people, but we're asking in this resolution for some regulation and guidelines to, for the regulation of kratom. So I would greatly appreciate your consideration and your support of this resolution. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Legislator Sutherland. And the unanimous vote of your committee, at the discretion of my colleagues here in the Rules Committee, would you all consider sponsoring this resolution? Okay, so we'll put an all sponsor on that. That being said, any questions from legislators? And not seeing any, I'll call the question then. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Legislator Sutherland, and thank you to your committee.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for your support. I look forward to it passing at our meeting December 2nd. Thank you.
All right, we'll continue on the agenda, and joining us this afternoon is the Commissioner of Planning, Alan Sorensen. I see him in the audience. While he's coming to the podium, I will be seeking a motion and a second on the following. This is item number 1, subset A request to authorize implementation and funding of the host agency agreement with the New York State Department of Transportation on behalf of the Orange County Transportation Council, which was designated in 1982 by the governor as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Orange County. The OCTC is responsible for planning and programming federal highway and federal transit funding. The County of Orange is the OCTC host agency. New York State Department of Transportation is updating all host agency agreements for MPOs across the state. Subsequent to legislative approval, a new host agency agreement between New York State DOT and the county will be executed to replace the last agreement, which was dated April 1st, 2012. The new agreement differs in form only. Substance and funding methodology will remain the same. This is legislative request number 224. I seek a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Kulisek, second by Mr. Vero. I think I've spoken a lot on this, but the floor is yours, Commissioner Sorensen.
Maybe I just, oh, yes, okay. It's a little counterintuitive. It turns red when it's on, okay. So, yeah, the last time that this agreement with State DOT was updated, as the resolution states, was back in April of 2012. These agreements are renewed every 10 years. DOT referred this agreement to us, which has been reviewed by council, and we need this agreement in place to accept the federal funds, which are significant in the tens of millions of dollars, and would ask for your support for the resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll open it up to questions from committee members. Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in regards to form only, what does that mean?
The only difference in the form, if you look at the agreement side by side, which I have, the paragraphs are almost identical. So some of the contact information has changed over the last 10 years. So, that part of it's changed. But in terms of the requirements, the establishment of the planning department as the host agency for the MPO. So the MPO is, Orange County Transportation Council is the MPO. That all stays the same. And so with this agreement in place, we can continue to do the work that we're doing with Transit Orange, as well as the federal highway side of our program, which is where we handle a unified planning work program and a transportation improvement program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. Any additional questions? Okay, not seeing any, I'll call the question on item A. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Continuing with Mr. Sorensen, I will seek a motion and a second on the following. This is letter B, a request approval for the Planning Department's Transit Title VI program, which is required to be maintained due to Federal Transit Administration regulations. Program shall be subject to amendment as necessary to ensure compliance with federal law, state law, and DOT and FTA regulations governing the subject matter of such programs. This is legislative request number 204, and I seek a motion and a second, please. Mr. Kulisek on the motion. I'll second that myself. Mr. Sorensen, you may continue.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you know, Title VI is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and that's the federal law that protects individuals and groups from discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, and so we have, as a requirement of accepting our transit dollars, we have to have in place a Title VI program, which we do have in place. Periodically, that needs to be revised and amended to remain consistent with federal, state, and laws. And so that's what we have done. And so we're asking for that Title VI program to be adopted.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions from legislators? Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any amendments for this new one?
We have,
JR, could you explain?
Right now, we're requesting approval. The only amendments would have been to remain consistent with the current federal regulations.
That's it, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. Any additional questions? Mr. Kulisek, the floor is yours, sir.
Not a question, but just comments that the MPO, that's not just for Orange County, right? There's other entities involved in the planning organization for Orange County Transportation Council, right?
Well, the Orange County Transportation Council is an MPO. There are other MPOs throughout New York State. So, for example, Dutchess County has the Dutchess County Transportation Council. Ulster County has the Ulster County Transportation Council. New York City encompasses not only the 5 boroughs, but also portions of Long Island, Westchester County, actually Rockland County, and that's covered under what we refer to as NIMTIC, which is the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. So there are MPOs throughout upstate New York as well. There's the Capital District MPO, Genesee MPO, Binghamton area, Buffalo. But when they use the term Metropolitan Planning Organization, that's the Orange County Transportation Council is Orange County's MPO.
Okay, any additional questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're almost done with Mr. Sorensen, and now we move to letter C, and this is a request supplemental appropriation in the amount of $40,000 from contingency funds to be used for a contract with the Orange County Land Trust for the purpose of updating the county open space plan. The current open space plan has not been updated since 2004. The Planning Department received a $10,000 grant from the Hudson Valley Greenway for the Open Spaces Plan update, in which the Orange County Land Trust was named as a partner on this project. The project is much more extensive and requires additional funding. This is legislative request number 219. I'm going to make the motion myself, and I seek a second. Second by Mr. Cheney. Mr. Sorensen, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The last time the county's open space plan was updated was in 2004. So there's a substantial amount of work that needs to go into this program. When we had reached out to the Hudson Valley Regional Council to secure the $10,000 grant, which we did secure, the purpose was to include the Orange County Land Trust as a partner in working with us to develop this open space plan update. Now that we're several months into the process, you know, we recognize that it's a monumental lift, but we're well on our way. I think we're going to have an excellent work product coming out of this. We're doing most of the work will still be done in-house, although, you know, within the department, I'm sure I will soon have 3 planning vacancies. So part of it's just the nature of this, you know, what's going on in the world. But so we can definitely utilize and need the additional resources from the Land Trust to keep this project moving forward in a timely manner. And I also believe that their contribution will help us to deliver a top-notch work product for the legislature.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll open it up to questions from committee members. I'll start with Mr. Paduk, followed by Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This $40,000, Is this what the county executive appropriated, or are you asking for another $40,000?
This is different from the funding that's proposed in a 2022 budget, which is for land conservation. That funding in the 2022 budget, $25,000 is allocated to conservation easements related to a water quality improvement program grant for Browns Pond in the city of Newburgh. The remaining $75,000 of that money is being set aside for work of the Orange County Land Trust to help facilitate conservation easements as part of open space protection. So that's more, I would characterize that more on the implementation side of the open space plan. So the plan itself will set the broad policy framework for open space throughout the county, open space including ag and farmland, agricultural and farmland, including parks and recreation, including natural resource protection. We'll also be focusing on the built environment. So we have some large cities in the county that could benefit by adding some greenscape, street trees, things of that nature. So we don't want to ignore those things. We're also looking at rail trails and just protection of water resources as part of this effort. So while it's an update of the 2004 plan, it's going to be, I think, substantially more substantive. But to answer your question, the money that we're requesting today is specifically for the open space plan. The monies that are being allocated in 2022 are really earmarked more towards implementation of open space projects, if you will.
Okay, and one other question, why contingency?
Well, we had to find, a source of funding. We had, there's work that we still want to accomplish in this year, and we had funding in our budget for that purpose. So that's why I pursued that.
Because that's usually used for an emergency or something. I mean, we have so much sales tax, you could have taken it from the undesignated fund balance as well, right? Like the county executive just did to lower taxation. I mean, that way you're not taxing people more. That's the point here.
Understood.
Contingency funds are taxed.
Not sure how to respond. I understand your point. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Legislator Cheney.
Thank you, Chairman. The way this is worded, it seems to indicate that this is funding that's additional to funding that's already in place and maybe has been expended. What was that base amount?
The amount that was originally allocated under the Hudson River Valley Greenway grant was $10,000. So we haven't expended all of that to date. There's still some funding there. But we recognized going in that was not going to be near enough dollars, to have the land trust work with us. They have some outstanding resources in terms of natural resource mapping that they have done, some of which they're developing. They are able to help us to advance some of the trail planning and other open space natural resource protection planning. So it makes sense, rather than us trying to reinvent all of that in-house, to partner with them.
So it's a collaborative effort between the planning department and the open space, or Orange County.
Orange County Land Trust.
Yeah, Orange County Land Trust, thank you. So the funding was in there for staffing from the county in the budget, or was it just an activity that was being done by staff?
Well, originally, the original intent before I got there was actually to try to secure a much larger grant to hire a consultant to undertake this effort. And we've been successful in that effort with the countywide resiliency plan, for example. We were able to secure a DEC grant, or Department of State grant, excuse me, to assist in that endeavor. Here, the Hudson River Valley Greenway, because of COVID and everything, they're funding was cut dramatically. But I felt, the effort of updating the county's open space plan, being it's as antiquated as it is, was something that we needed to advance. So we determined to undertake this project in-house, but recognizing that we would need some outside resources to supplement that effort.
And all this 40,000 is going to end up going to the land trust?
That is the intent.
The intent, okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Any additional questions? Mr. Paduk, sir.
Total cost for the project, or?
Well, it'll be, the total cash outlay would be 50,000. The balance of the project will be done in-house with staff resources.
Through your department?
Yes, sir, yeah.
So you have money in your budget for this somewhere, right? That's what
Well,
you're saying.
it's coming out of our money that's allocated for salaries, salaries and fringe, so.
Okay, thank you.
My only question for the commissioner is this report, this open space plan, any idea of when you think this might be revised and updated? And when it is, I will welcome you to come and share it with us.
Hoping that we're on schedule to, have a working draft to you by this time next year. We're going to have a series of, again, because of COVID, we're going to do a series of surveys to get input from the public. Those will be online surveys, so those will begin to be rolled out in December. And then we'll have probably one each month on various topics. So one on agriculture, one on parks and recreation, a small questionnaire for each one of those topic areas so that we can get public input. As we get into the spring, we'll be looking at, hosting a public hearing to get public input early in the process. And then as the plan is in its draft form, it'll come before this body for your consideration and recommendations, revisions as needed, and then ultimately for your adoption.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any additional questions? All right, not seeing any, I will then call the question. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2. I see that we have the County Attorney, Langdon Chapman, here in the audience, along with Damian Brady, Chief Assistant County Attorney. And I'll be seeking a motion and a second on the following. And pardon me, this is a little bit lengthy. This is a request to appropriate $4,769,665 for year 3 of the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services grant funds from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021. 2 years ago, the legislature approved a legislative request to appropriate funds to accept a grant from the New York State Office of Legal Services in the amount of $23,848,325.55 over a 5-year period from April 1st, 2018 through March 31st, 2023. Said funds will be used to enhance legal services to the indigent population of Orange County, consistent with the statewide expansion for such services pursuant to the Hurl Herring lawsuit. The third-year grant funds, upon review and approval by New York State, will be distributed for legal representation and defense of indigents as follows. Representation of indigents by the Legal Aid Society, $1,780,950. Defense of indigents under County Law 18B, including fees, services, software, office supplies, attorney programs, investigators, consultants, and assigned counsel, $2,174,665, and the continuation of existing county positions created in year 2 of the grant, as well as new county positions to be created subject to legislative approval. That's $814,050. And this is legislative request number 238. And I seek a motion and a second, please. Motion by Mr. Vero, second by Mr. Kulisek. Mr. Chapman, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I think, Chairman, you enunciated pretty much all I can say here. The bottom line is, a couple of years ago, the legislature agreed to accept a $23.8 million grant. This is simply the third year appropriation of the funds associated with that grant. 1.78 million of it's going to go to legal aid. 2.174 million of it's going to go to the 18B program, and 814,000 is going to go to 6 county positions, 4 of which have already been created, 2 of which have yet to be created, and we'll be coming back to you in a couple of months, if not sooner, for that. But this is all state grant funding, and it's something that came out of a statewide settlement called Harrell Herring, the defendant's names, several years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. I'll open it up to questions from committee members. Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours.
All the years were equal, right? Pretty much equal. I was trying to do the math here.
No, they don't quite equal out. What happens every year, it's actually, Mr. Paduk, going to grow. So the states start off with an investment, and then every year it almost doubles up.
All right, and the other question I have is there any additional costs at the end of the year for us?
There's not. This is
No,
all
no
state
county.
grant funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. Mr. Kulisek, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, since this has been from April 1st, 2018, has there been any kind of a log or reporting on all of the cases and expenditures that we've had?
So we have what's called a data officer, and we keep track of the various cases. This has been a little bit of an odd rollout because of all things these days with the odd rollout. We're operating on a year behind fiscally. So we're talking about the fiscal year that's kind of ended already at the state, so we're just running a year behind. But the reality, Mr. Kulisek, is that as this program started, COVID started and the world shut down. So what we've really been doing is trying to roll out more contracts with criminal defense providers. The biggest change you've seen in criminal defense here in Orange County as a result of this program is now there's counsel at arraignment. Historically, when you were arrested for something, you didn't have a lawyer present. The arraignment is, you want to plead guilty or not guilty? You pled not guilty. You didn't have a lawyer present to decide whether you're going to get remanded to jail. So the biggest change this has rolled out is we now have counsel present at all arraignment. And thanks to the efforts of the sheriff and the undersheriff, we have a centralized arraignment point now at the county jail that's taken effect. But in terms of really having stats to back up what's been going on, there's not a lot out there yet because of the timing of the rollout. If that answers your question.
We're appropriating millions of dollars or accepting millions of dollars. I'd just like to know where it goes,
Well, I'll tell you where it goes, but it goes to, there's multiple aspects of it. So you've got a mentoring program in there. So if you have an 18B attorney, and I'm not talking down to you, but I'll bring it down to a basic level. You get arrested for a crime, there's a couple different ways. There's 3 different ways you can be defended. You can go retain private counsel. If you're poor, you can go have the Legal Aid Society represent you. Or if there's a conflict, you and I go out and rob the store together. I get legal aid. I'm going to say you did it. You're going to say I did it. You'll go get the 18B program. So you go get a nice new attorney to represent you in the 18B program. Under this program, we have money now available to hire a senior counsel to assist your relatively newer counsel. It's called a mentoring program. So that's one aspect of how the money will be used. Secondarily, if you get a more complex trial, you have a second chair program. Typically, how it had worked in Orange County for the longest time, and this is common around the state, is if you wanted to hire an expert, if you wanted to get something extra, the defense counsel had to make an application to the county court judge, and that application was not always granted. So now our 18B administrator, Jim Monroe, he's got a pile of money, and you make the application to him, hey, I need an more experienced counsel to second chair this case with me. So you'll be able to go get second chair money as this program continues to roll out. Because of the slowness of the rollout associated with the shutdown of the courts, it's been a little bit slow. But the biggest change is you get all defendants who now have counsel at arraignment.
Okay, accountability is everything. And last year you said that, of course, things were much slower last year because of the COVID.
Sure.
And we received this much money last year?
No, we didn't receive this much money last year. Every year it goes up. Damien, does it go up twice every year pretty much?
Year 2 was 3.179 million, and then year 3 is 4.769 million. So it basically goes up by about 50% every year until through year 5.
Okay, so last year was 3 and change?
3 and change, and then it's 4.7, and the following year.
And that's my point. Like on a slow year, you got 3 and change. where did it go? That's my,
Well, where it went, the biggest expenses we had were the council of arraignment program. And that's a huge portion of it, because what happens, you get arrested in Newburgh in the middle of the night, or you get arrested in Hamptonburg in the middle of the night, you oftentimes we're just gonna end up in jail. Now you're gonna have, we have counsel appearing at every single arraignment. Lawyers, for better or for worse, are not cheap. So we have multiple contracts out there with criminal defense counsel. We put it out for RFP, and those lawyers will go and appear at all these arraignments. And that costs.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kulisek. Mr. Paduk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the last couple of sentences, it says, in the continuation of county positions created in year 2 of the grant, as well as new county positions to be created subject to legislative approval. Are you asking us to approve any legislative positions now?
No, as I mentioned before, we'll be coming back to you in a couple of months from this. So the state, and to Mr. Kulisek's point, accountability is very important. The state, I'm not going to say micromanages in a negative way, but the state's money. So they manage this money very tightly. We highly negotiate every aspect of this budget with the state. One of the state wants 2 things for us. Well, the state wants a number of things, but 2 positions they've suggested we create are a full-time forensic defense criminal attorney. So if you have a blood spatter evidence, for example, you've got somebody who can be an expert in that, and also a full-time continuing legal education position for the 18B bar, so that you can ensure, the state can ensure that our 18B bar has the best CLE available to them. So those are 2 positions we're going to be coming back to that we're literally fine-tuning the details with the state on.
So I would assume those same 2 positions could do other things?
Well, they're
It's not
limited to
gonna be-
what the state grant, the state ILS program dictates what can be done and can't be done, but predominantly it's going to be heavily focused on, there's more forensic evidence issues than you might think of here in Orange County, and the CLE is actually a full-time position.
Okay.
But that's all driven by the state.
And my last question is, so at the end of the year, if you have monies left, it says you can include fees for services, software, office supplies, attorney programs, et cetera. Do you spend that money just so to ensure that you get the more the next year, or is that, is that what happens with the extra money that's left? No.
No, it'll roll forward. So we're not going to, first of all, we have to justify every dollar to the state at the end of the day. So
So you spent every dollar last year?
we don't spend every dollar. The money will roll forward. If you don't finish spending it, it'll roll forward. There's a 5-year settlement, Mr. Paduk, on the state with this money. So we're 23 million. Think of us, we're a 400,000 person county. We're getting 23 million over 5 years. So you can extrapolate that out over how much money you're talking about statewide. And as a result, this program is going to be in effect probably forever, as most state programs, once they're created, are.
Okay.
So just keep rolling forward.
Okay, any additional questions from committee members? All right, not seeing any. I'll call the question then. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Don't go running away yet, Mr. Chapman. Next on our agenda is item number 3. And as you can all see on the agenda itself, these items are for discussion. They are A, B, and C. And what I'm going to do, just for the sake of everybody here, because they are for discussion, I'm just going to read them, and then I'll take a motion for discussion on all of them. A is a request to permit the sale of certain county-owned vacant property on Route 17K in the town of Montgomery, parcel number 30-1-76, consisting of 139.7 plus or minus acres to the highest bidder. Such sale will take place after execution of an option to purchase. The option of purchase will be available to the highest bidder, provided that closing must take place within 365 days of the execution of the option agreement, or such authorization to permit the sale is revoked. The option agreement and contract of sale shall be approved by the county attorney. Bid shall be received at the date and time set by the Commissioner of General Services within 90 days of the effective date of this local law. B is a request to declare certain county-owned vacant property on Route 17K in the town of Montgomery. Again, parcel 30-1-76, consisting of the 139.7 plus or minus acres as surplus property, as it is not necessary for public use and enjoyment. And C is the request that the Orange County Legislature declare itself lead agency for the Type 1 action of selling county-owned property on Route 17K in the town of Montgomery, classifying the action as a Type 1 action under SECR, issuing a negative declaration, and stating the reasons therefore, including that the action is solely the potential sale of the property to the highest bidder, and that the county has no plans for the potential purchaser, and that the potential purchaser will have to undergo a full environmental review for any site plan subdivision or any other needed approval, directing the filing of the negative declaration with the Town of Montgomery Supervisor and the Environmental Notice Bulletin. These three items here, A, B, and C, are for discussion this afternoon, so I seek a motion and a second for discussion, please. For discussion, Mr. Paduk with the motion. I'll make the second myself. Mr. Chapman, please, if you will.
So with me today are the Director of Real Property, Eric Rusher, and also the Commissioner of Parks, and I asked them to be here because they've got some familiarity with this property as well, so they may come and join me if I stumble for any reason or supplement my comments. So as I think this legislature is aware, several months ago, the Town of Montgomery IDA came to one committee of the legislature, I don't know honestly if it was this committee or another committee, and started to talk about their desire to obtain this county property and use it as some sort of a joint marketing effort. And the town IDA thought about how they could go about doing that, and ultimately it didn't end up with a resolution to go forward on that. Subsequent to that, another purchaser reached out to the county and said, hey, we'd like to have a shot at obtaining title to this property and doing a project there. So from our perspective, the best way to handle this, since we have multiple interests, is to look at simply putting the property out for sale to the highest bidder, letting the chips fall where they may, giving the prospective purchaser a 1-year option to go lock down the property so you're not sitting in perpetuity selling it to somebody who never develops it, and move forward. The property is about 140 acres. The county pays taxes on it now to the tune of a little over $20,000 a year. So every year the county is laying out money for this property. It's being farmed, 25 acres of it, and we're receiving annual payment of $675 to farm the property. So we're having a net loss of about $19,600 a year on the property. And on top of it, there are other uses on the property occurring which aren't subject to county regulation. They're just simply happening. I've heard reports of ATV operators going on there and other type of actions which probably aren't in the best interest of the county. So rather than let people kind of make haphazard proposals to purchase it from the county, we thought we ought to introduce the concept to the legislature of putting it out for simple sale to the highest bidder. But we asked for it to be discussion because it's a lot of land. It's a big issue. And we would encourage members to go out and take a look at the property, come up with any questions they have on it, and then try to proceed in a fashion where we answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. What I'm going to do is open up to the committee for questions. And I'll start. I have Mr. Kulisek followed by Mr. Cheney. Mr. Kulisek, sir, the floor is yours.
Just, I wanted to clarify, there's no action taken on this today, right? These are
No,
legislative,
just discussion today.
these are legislative requests here, and it says to permit the sale of county-owned vacant property and request to declare it vacant property, yada, yada. I mean, these are actual requests, and it doesn't say for discussion only on these. So.
Well, if you want to make a motion to make a vote on them today, you're more than welcome to. I am not ready to vote on that today, so that's why I put on the agenda itself for discussion, as I am not prepared to take action on these items today myself.
Okay. Early on, there was discussion about Cornell Cooperative Extension going over there, I believe, and with now they're out of Finchfield Turnpike out in whatever. They were looking at it since it was right across the street from the brick house. Use it for parkland or for their equestrian work and things like that. There's no interest there at all from anything.
Mr. Kulisek, I've not heard that at all. There may have been such discussion, but when I get multiple proposals that start coming to our office, I don't like the haphazard nature of I'll give you this and I'll give you that, and I'd rather let everybody say what they want to do with it.
I was under the understanding that there was interest years back that it would become a park since it was adjacent to, across the street from the brick house.
It is adjacent to and across the street from, but with all due respect, it's never become a park, and yeah, I've only been here 8 years, but I've seen lots of talk of lots of years of this or that, but if at the end of the day it doesn't happen, the question for the legislature, and this is a policy question, do we want to continue to hang on to 140 acres that we're paying $20,000 a year in taxes for, where things are happening on that property, or do we want to, and you have interest commercially in developing it, or do you want to potentially sell it? That's the policy question. I don't have a dog in the fight. I present the question to you.
And the impetus for bringing it here today was because someone else had also
So
showed interest in it, as well as the Montgomery IDA.
that's right. The Montgomery IDA, and I don't know if there's this committee or whose committee it was in front of,
It's this committee, I believe, yeah.
made a pitch for that, and it didn't go anyplace. And then another entity came, and when you're going to sell property, you need to sell property, in a very public process. You don't want to do it in a haphazard process. I felt the Montgomery IDA as a quasi-town entity had the right to come make that pitch, but when you see other folks doing it, I think the better way to do it is to let a bid go out for it.
Was there any further conversation with the IDA in Montgomery? After,
My understanding, Mr. Kulisek, is the legislature didn't want to move forward in that direction. I mean, if, that's your call, not mine.
Thank you.
Won't be your call for long, though, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kulisek. Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Thank you. How did the county come to acquire the property?
We got it from Eric knows, I think. Eric, Yeah, we got it from somebody a long time ago, but go ahead. Here, just talk here. You got the details.
Good afternoon. The county acquired the property by donation in 1975. It was actually done in 2 deeds. The deed for the brick house portion, which was roughly 37.5 acres, included the language that this conveyance is made upon the express condition in the party of the second part by the acceptance of this deed, covenants that the premises here and above described shall be used by the party of the second part as an historic site and for museum purposes, and uses incidental and consistent therewith, and for no other purpose. This covenant shall run with the land and bind all future owners thereof. There's no such verbiage in the other individual separate deed that pertains to this property. So there's no restrictions on that property. Mrs. Kulisek is correct. I mean, I've been, this parcel, basically, we've had numerous requests from developers and whatnot, maybe 20, I think, might have been like 15 years ago, maybe Cornell and whatnot, perhaps less, but I mean, there's been many people that have shown interest in this property. It's just as Langdon was saying, we're paying taxes on it. It's brick houses right across the street, as well as the town of Montgomery does own a 118-acre portion of property right across the street. About 10-acre corner by Berea Road is where their athletic fields are. The Farmers Museum is there, as well as an area that, they do Civil War reenactments at the brick house. And actually within 15 minutes, you have Winding Hills Park, you have Thomasville Park, you have Hillhold Museum, privately owned golf courses, and this basically is an industrial zone, and it's good access to 84, prime real estate property, like real estate terminology, location, location, location. This is a textbook example. There are federal and state wetlands on the property. But regardless, I think it does have a good utility and quite a bit of value. I haven't had an appraisal done on it yet. I did receive one quote back, but I'd be happy to show anyone that would like to see the property, and that's basically it. It corners on Barron Road there. I don't think it would have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. And we're talking 2,800 feet of road frontage on 17K.
Okay, thank you. So there will be an appraisal done.
Well, I've got quotes, and I think it would be a good idea.
Is that a commitment from the executive branch that there will be an appraisal done?
If the legislature wants to do an appraisal, we don't mind doing an appraisal, certainly. Likewise, we don't want to spend money on an appraisal if there's no sense of parting ways with this.
Understood. I guess one of the things that kind of troubles me is we do have a property across the street, and we would not have, excuse me, would not have any control over who our new neighbor would be. And I would think that there's good potential for there to be a neighbor that may be inconsistent with the park aspect across the street and also in the area. I've seen the maps, I've seen aerial photography, I haven't, physically been to the site for the purpose of looking at it in that regard. But that's one aspect of it that I think that this committee needs to explore. Is there an intent to have a minimum bid on this property at this time?
There's not an intent at this time, and that's something that, that's why we ask for this for discussion. I think you have a couple of different issues you've raised here. One, do you want to sell to the highest bidder? And two, if so, you're going to have a minimum bid on it. And that's a policy call that we don't have a strong feeling on that either way in terms of do you sell to the highest bidder? I always prefer, as an attorney, selling to the highest bidder because you're going to mitigate your chances of any litigation. But if you want to go down to a neighborhood compatibility, that's your collective call.
Well, we do have an investment in properties immediately adjacent to and also in the area, and I would think that that should be a consideration that we should include in our deliberations. I believe Mr. McCary made a list at one point a number of years ago of all the properties in the county that he felt were marketable and that maybe we should consider trying to sell. Was this on that list?
I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure it was on the list, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay.
But I think to your point, Mr. Cheney, one thing that would benefit too is that the town owns 118 acres that basically wrap around the brick house parcels, so I think they'd have a big say in, it would be to their benefit also, as far as the use of the property and whatnot. So I think we'd have extra eyes there.
Okay. Thank you for those answers, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Next, I have Legislator Hines.
Yes, thank you. My only recollection of the property is that the Montgomery IDA came to us and wanted to charge us a 50% real estate commission. That's why I think they left without any traction in their proposal. But I do remember they talked about having a body of water, I think, on that property, whether it be a pond or a lake.
There are certainly wetlands there. I don't know if there's a body of water or not.
Yeah, there's a stream that basically I can, actually, as things get further, I'll, be happy to forward you. And I think there might have been some maps in the documents that were included with that presentation at that time. But there's a stream that meanders through the property.
Yeah, and they were talking about different, I didn't realize it was zoned industrial. They were talking about different uses on that property, at least in their vision, where, they would sell off different areas. That's what their intent was. So I'm wondering if it would be, in your professional opinion, Mr. Rusher, if we broke it off and maybe thought about selling it in smaller parcels rather than as a whole.
I really think it'd be best to sell it as a whole. I mean, because there are portions because of the way the wetlands that are mapped showing the property, a certain portion of it to access. There might have to be some kind of little mitigation that would be allowed and whatnot, but subdividing it and we'd have to really look at the utility of that. You know what I mean? Because there's portions of the site. We don't want to put a road in. That's for sure. The section the frontage close to Barron Road. There's a wetland section there, and there's actually. Down Barron Road, there's wetlands down in there which would access the other portion. So I think we should try our luck selling it as one parcel, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Paducah, I'm going to let you go. I got one quick question. We just had Commissioner Sorensen here from Planning talking about open spaces. I see we have the Commissioner of Parks here as well. Has there been any discussion about creating this land and keeping it an open green space as a county park? or county preserve or anything like that and not developing it? I mean, if we've owned it or it's been given to us since 1975, has that ever been part of the discussion?
The commissioner's coming up, but I mean, it's just, it would cost us millions to develop it and maintain it, maybe passive recreation or whatnot, but that would exempt, for the 21,000. But I think the revenue from the parcel and just basically would overall help taxpayers as a whole. We're paying 14,000 to the school right now, and I'm sure it would be more. Once it was, well, we know it would be more once it'd be developed, but.
And that's a fair answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Paduk, sir, the floor is yours.
You didn't mention, do you have a survey of the property?
I have tax maps and basically all sorts of wetland maps and things like that that show the property.
That shows the whole thing, so it'd be nice, I mean, this one's a little tough to really.
I'm sorry?
You have a bigger map that we could look at, or no? I mean, this really just shows the outline of the parcel, not.
Would you like them now, or would you like me to send everybody maps? And I could make you a 24 by 36 map if you'd like, or I have an 11 by 17 here in the file or somewhere, and I can pass it around. It's up to you.
Well, I'd like to see it. All I see here is just lines. I don't see where wetlands might be or where access road. You said there's 22 many square road frontage, 2,800 foot of road frontage. Is the wetlands right there? I mean, there's a lot of concerns here that what the property, like you said, how it could be used. I like Mr. Cheney's idea about maybe the county doing our own subdivision, and the legislature owns the property, so we can decide to do what we want with it. So it isn't whether we're being forced to do anything. This is a suggestion to us, so we can take all the avenues we want to ensure that this property is used as we would like to see it. And I'll just remind everybody, we've given away opportunities in the past where we don't have a say on RFPs or anything. We've done it once, and I think you know where it is, so I'm really concerned that if we're going to look to sell that much property, that we have a big say in what happens, if anything happens at all. Thank you.
Mr. Paduk, I appreciate that. And quite honestly, that's why in speaking with Mr. Chapman, I said, we need to have this discussion here today as a committee, and we need to further investigate this. And we need to make sure that not only do we have a say in this, but we are all fully aware of the property and the situation and moving forward. And so it was my decision to put this up for discussion purposes, and I can see that we've opened a good discussion here. And so I appreciate your comments there. I'll ask if there's any more questions. Mr. Kulisek, the floor is yours, sir.
Has there been any conversation with the town of Montgomery? I mean, they did show an interest in it, and usually when we have property that we determine surplus, we go to the local municipality first and see if they would like to acquire it, or.
So the IDA is an arm. Mr. Benton's shaking his head vigorously back there. I don't know if he's referring to the IDA engagement or for, okay, so he's shaking his head again. So I think the answer is yes in terms of it. The Montgomery IDA is an arm of the town of Montgomery, just as the Orange County IDA is for the benefit of Orange County. And so the town IDA came in and made their pitch for it, but it wasn't a pitch that was ultimately receivable or hittable, perhaps.
Thank you.
Well, far be it for me to assume what my colleagues here want, but one of the suggestions that I'll make to you, gentlemen, is to provide us with mapping, as much clear and as detailed maps as possible, and also let us know if you would like us to go out and do a site visit on this property. I would be glad to put some boots on and go take a look at that. But I believe that this discussion, it will be the first step in a process. And if at the end of the process, as Mr. Paduk said, we do control the procedure here. If we vote to put this up for sale, I would hope that all of our questions would be asked and answered before we get to that final step. So that being said, I'm going to charge you guys with getting us some maps and some more detail, and to follow up if there are additional questions that this committee has, that we will send them to you. I think there were some questions related to some surveying and issues related to that. So, Mr. Chapman, I think the ball's in your court with this as we're going to go forward.
Sure. So we can easily blow up some maps and provide larger scale maps, no problem. And if members individually want to come out and visit, I think probably coordinate with Jim. Coordinate with Jim or Eric, pick whoever you want to coordinate with and go out, and they'll be happy to give you a little site visit individually or groups of a couple, or whatever you all want to do.
All right, I have Mr. Cheney.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to suggest that maybe through this committee, it be arranged to have a site visit for members of the committee and other members of the legislature that would be interested.
Absolutely. Let's work on that and let's put that together and we'll make it happen. You know, it's getting colder and wetter out there, maybe in the winter, so make sure you got some good boots on there. Before I open it up to other questions of non-committee members, any additional questions here from the committee itself? Mr. Kulisek, sir.
Yes, I see Commissioner Parks here. Mr. Brooks, what is your position here in this conversation?
Okay, so this piece of property, the best way to do it is come take a look at it, okay? Because it borders 84 and 17K, and, you know, in my opinion, it's not conducive to, you know, a park setting. The topography is basically flat to rolling. The soils are not good. There's a lot of wetlands on the property. I had a forestry plan done, and the timber on this property is not conducive to harvesting. So, you know, in my opinion, if I put back on my, you know, private business hat, it just makes a lot of sense when you have an asset like this and a fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers. You look at 20 grand a year in taxes that's coming out of the park's budget. Maybe a sale of the property and will generate revenue to invest in other property throughout the county that can be more conducive to a park setting. That's my take on it.
The 20 grand in taxes every year is put into your budget, right, to cover those taxes?
Yes, but
really coming out of your park's pocket.
I guess what I'm trying to say is ultimately it's the taxpayers, right, that are paying for it. Right? So every 5 years is $100,000. So again, it's just my personal opinion with my previous business hat on that you transfer an asset into revenue and you look to invest that money in another asset that the county can enjoy in a park setting.
And I believe it's 9.5 acres of wetlands there. I don't know how it lays out on the property, but it's 9.5 according to the county website. So.
Just real quick, the smartest people when it comes to land are usually farmers. So you have 140 acres there, and only 25 of it is being farmed. So, you know, the soils on that property have been identified by the farmer, and that's what's being used.
I have Mr. Paduk, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Benton. Mr. Paduk.
In that same avenue, you said the soils are no good. So, you know, reaching out to industrial properties with no water and sewer on 17K there either, right?
I don't believe there's water and sewer there.
No.
There's not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn to Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the town of Montgomery IDA sometime this year approached the county about an idea of partnering with us. And my personal opinion was to tell them, if you want to buy it, we'll sell it. We don't need to partner. We're not a developer. I don't believe the county should think anything about putting in its own road and dividing into sublots and making some sort of development. We're not developers. That's not our job. I think we should just sell the property, again, because like I said, and like was pointed out, there's a few acres out of this big parcel that's, I think, used for hay. Corn? Okay. You know, so it's only, you know, like 20 acres or so. So it's a little bit of income for a farmer, but again, it's mostly wooded and with intermittent, you know, lowlands, wetlands that are in between peaks or valleys on this land. So that's just my opinion. If we deem it necessary, we should just sell the whole lot as one big piece. And if the town of Montgomery IDA wants to make an offer first, I support that as well and give them the opportunity to develop it under their own rules first.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. And I just want to thank everyone. That's been some great discussion there. I'm going to turn, the last comment will come from Mr. Vero.
Thank you, Chairman. If I understand this correctly, you have to turn yours off. Okay. If I understand this correctly, we've owned this property for 46 years with no plan whatsoever. It's got to be me. The question I've got, if this is parkland, if we sell this, do we need to replace with other like-in-kind parkland?
Mr. Rivera, this is not parkland.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together a little field trip out there and invite all legislators to take a look. And I hope that this is the first step in the process, and I look forward to seeing this returning for action from this committee in the near future. So we'll work on putting together that little field trip and get out there and have a look at that property. Okay. And we're just going to turn to one last item on the agenda, and it's a reminder. This is item number 5. And I want to just announce that the organizational meeting of the Orange County Legislature is scheduled for January 6th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. That's our organizational meeting on January 6th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. with a snow date of January 7th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. And that is it on the agenda. So at this moment, I will seek a motion to adjourn, please. All right. And a second, Mr. Paduk and Mr. Kulisek. Okay, we have our special rules committee meeting scheduled. It was scheduled to begin at 4:15. If anyone needs to step out, I'll give you a minute or two. But if you're all ready to go, we just got to shut down the computers and get them all turned right back